Back again. As we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and the day to day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles. And sometimes it's hard for us to see our way through beyond the normal mundane or where unscripted dreams live. Join us for thought provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So, welcome back. So, today's episode, people, is titled Visiting Old Places. So we got a few talking points, but I think the first thing to really focus on with visiting old places is like just take a second and think about just visiting old places. Like, all the things that you're going to experience as far as like things changing for the better or maybe even for the worse, perhaps, with how you process things or how you look at things. Like maybe this is beneath me, or maybe this is above me now. It just depends on where you are with life and what your perspective is. But the whole point is basically just thinking about the value of visiting old places. So the first talking point we're actually going to talk about is actually reconnecting with people. So when you talk about visiting old places and reconnecting with people, you know, especially people from our past, uh, it can be a chance to catch up with old friends, or reunite with, I don't know, family members or who you may have lost touch with. I imagine you visiting old places, it might not be easy to track people down, just because maybe they moved too. So, like, say that you moved away from your hometown and you moved across country or wherever, like you moved, at least greater than 1,000 miles away. So I imagine it's pretty much damn near impossible to keep up with everybody that was in your past life, just because everything moves at a different pace. So with everything moving at a different pace and you being unable to really track everything that's going on, you know, you kind of have to just accept things for what they are and just kind of like, I don't know, pick up the pieces if you ever choose to revisit that place, or you just move on with life, man. Because just as much as they're being distracted with new opportunities or chances, you're going to be distracted with new opportunities and chances. And that's pretty much just the way of life. So, if you move away from home at like 18 years old and you've been gone for about 10 years or a decade, same thing. You might have some kids, you might have a family, you might have progressed to a level where you see things way different. So when you come back, you might see some people on the same stuff. You might see some people that elevated. You might even witness people that are no longer with us. So there's all kind of things that happen when it comes to visiting old places. Marcus, you got anything to say?
As far as physical location, that's kind of, well, it's different. But if you're like physically going back, I mean, people move, people do stuff. I haven't been home in a long time, right? And it's just one of those things that's part of life. But we're going to just maybe the theoretical old places and they live in your head later on. But yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about like going back to where you used to, I remember like growing up in like Cleveland and going back and how just small it seems and how just having that perspective of like being an adult versus how it was when you were a kid. But just thinking about like what your mindset was at the time, what you were focused on, and how sometimes thinking for me sometimes it was just having access to things that I didn't have access to, and the things that I just enjoyed and really wanted to be there. I didn't really care about, and it was I didn't care about. Just like very easy for me to access it if I really wanted to. But just thinking about like people and things like that, I guess as far as going back for me, kind of different. I guess if you grow up in different places, like for me, I didn't grow up in the same place. I moved twice as a kid, three three different states. So for me, there's a level of detachment that I've kind of used to that I didn't really understand until I got older. It's probably why it's easy for me to move, as I meet people where it's like hard for them to leave where they're from. Like for me, it's like I did it twice, and then I did it as an adult too, kind of just bouncing back and forth, and then coming out to South Carolina. So I think it's depends on kind of your upbringing and your background too, and how you individually just kind of relate to different locations, and just kind of where your mindset was, and just how you kind of view things. Some of us we're somewhere, but we're just passing by. Even if we're there for years, we just moving through. We might meet some people, but we out of there. First shot, gone, right? So, but no, I think Joe, you just make a good point of like, yeah, I guess probably just in your experience, it's a little bit different. And that like you can go back to places that you're pretty close to, in like
Yeah.
location wise, and kind of you might still see people, or people who are no longer here, people that have like moved away, but they come back periodically and things like that. So I think it's a quite between the both of us, like two very different experiences.
Absolutely. I agree with you, man. When I did leave, I actually moved back to my hometown, but when I initially left for 10 years or so, um, after at the age of 17, so 18, 17, somewhere around there. I have a late birthday. So, pretty much when I moved out, I never looked back really too much for various reasons, very appropriate reasons. So now that I moved back and things have kind of elevated, in other words, I kind of left because things weren't as developed here as they are now. Not saying that this city was underdeveloped, definitely wasn't. But as far as like the mindset, how people, the temperament of people, how they react, like that wasn't the at that time that wasn't the reflection of what I was used to living, because when I moved away and went to school, I got exposed to a lot. So it's just more or less like it was more faster paced than it was back home. But now I'm back home and I can barely keep up. Like it's a lot going on out there now. It's crazy how you be gone for 10 plus years and you come back and things just elevated at an exponential rate. But I will say this: one thing I do like, Marcus, is the nostalgic feeling, like the nostalgia feeling and the memories that I did have previously. I would go to some of those favorite places I used to be at, or I would chill at, and I would just look at certain areas and be like, "Oh, this is when I did this. Oh, this is when I did that." And me and my friends were doing this, and it's just crazy to see like how it no longer exists, or it does exist. Like, say, like, for example, there was like this food place that we used to go to all the time, like every Friday night, like after basketball games, football games, we'll go there and eat with my boys. And it's no longer there anymore. Like, they didn't turn it into an apartment complex. So like by me driving by, or me even walking in that area, you get flashbacks, but you're like, dang, it's crazy how so much things have developed since then, with you being gone and going away. So I just think it's a cool thing to really think about. And I think it's very beneficial for you to do those type of things, just because it helps your mind understand the concept of time. So if you're thinking of like a time capsule or whatnot, like old places can pretty much serve as a time capsule. And, you know, basically you can categorize stages of your life better when situations like that come about, because you may have not appreciated at the time, but now you looking back and reminiscing on those moments, you realize how much fun you really had, or how much you didn't know what you thought you knew compared to current time. So it's really a dope thing, and it's an awesome feeling to get old, contrary to belief. But I would also say rediscovery and exploration. So it's always great to rediscover certain things that you once loved and you forgot, because sometimes you forget about it and you be like, dang, I really miss doing that. I remember doing this X amount of years ago. Now you're doing it with a different generation. Maybe you're doing it with your kids. Maybe you're doing it with your new girl or your wife or whatever, significant other. You know what I'm saying? Like, there might be some things they used to do with people at that time. Now you can pretty much bring somebody else or put somebody else on to something else that you used to enjoy.
So just want to pivot a little bit to the to just this is kind of just an episode about reflection and kind of the importance of that. And just as we kind of getting ready for this episode, just thinking about like the past 10 years of at least of my life at least, and just looking at, you know, what's the like big lesson learned, or like what hardship that I have to endure that, you know, that is really memorable to me. And I remember I was kind of thinking, you know, like 5 years ago, whenever I moved out of South Carolina. But I remember at the time I had at that point in my career, I had was making the most money I had ever made. I had all the things because I'm a simple individual. I don't require
Balling.
much.
He was balling.
And I had as far as like compensation and what like material wise, I had really everything that I wanted. And I had worked pretty hard to get to that point. But in that moment, I realized when I had all this stuff, there really wasn't a lot of stuff. The particular things that I wanted, I had it. Like wasn't an issue for me. But what I realized in that moment was that all that work, all the work that I put in, all the time, the effort, the sacrifice that I put in was that I lived like where I want. I didn't want to live in the city that I lived in, but as far as my living arrangements and like as far as that like the location, the type of place I lived in, like I was living where I wanted to live. And I had all the things that I wanted to have, but I was really unhappy. And I realized in that moment, and why this was important to mention, is that when you kind of look back on that, it's like, well, I thought that material things and having all the things that I always wanted were going to make me happy. And then when I had it, I realized I wasn't. And in realizing that, it kind of pushed me on the path to really wanting to be free. And that's when, you know, sparked the idea for starting my business and doing all those things and all the hurdles and things that ensued after that, as far as relocation and all those things. But really at that point, that was really the pivot from me going to an employee to really trying to do something for myself so I can be free. Like that was a pivotal moment for me. And I'll sign off on the struggle that led up to that point. But I'm not signing off on any of this South Carolina stuff yet. I'm not there yet. But I'll give, you know, up to that point, I get that a pass. That was essential for my development because I wouldn't be here where I was at. And I definitely wouldn't have my own business if I didn't get fed up with certain things as far as employment is concerned. And also if things didn't transpire in a way in which I realized how little control I have because I work for somebody else. On top of having everything that I wanted, I needed to shed the materialistic part of me had to die for me to be kind of where I'm at today. So it was like that had to happen. But Joe, I guess anything on your end that you feel is that you look back, any lessons learned that you feel are pivotal that you accept within your realm of whatever you want to share and not share.
Um, I would like to say a few things, honestly. What I've learned is inspiration. Visiting old places, and kind of the reason why I'm here is, this is where it all started for me. So visiting old places pretty much can inspire us to dream big or pursue our passions. I went out there and I did it, and actually I exceeded my expectations of myself. So, if it was all over and said with today, I can honestly confidently say that I definitely surpassed my expectations. I went from a kid with little to no vision to actually having a ton of vision and actually achieving those goals. I just needed to figure out a way of how I could apply them. And lo and behold, visiting old places give you that appreciation and that gratitude. So like, visiting old places just help us appreciate, people, most importantly, experiences that pretty much shape us who we are today. Like when you reflect on the impact they've had on your life, that's when you're supposed to pretty much express that gratitude and as far as when it comes to your journey. So I was very appreciative of going through or having such a hard time, what I felt like was a really hard time. Because if I didn't go through all those struggles, I definitely wouldn't be feeling like I'm sitting pretty at this point, with overcoming those obstacles. So, those overcoming those obstacles really gave me or instilled the confidence that I needed to get me here. So I I don't know. My perspective is way different than most people. Some people may look at the struggle that they had and they say, I don't want to come back here. This place is a dump. And that very well may be true. But I just, my take on my experience is totally different, man. I mean, granted, I did come back here for other circumstances, but I made the best of it. But the most important part about it is I took action and I accepted my actions. So that's probably why mentally I'm in a good space or I'm in good standing, because I actually accepted my actions and knew like this was fate for me. Like this is something I really wanted to do and it worked out for me. It's not like that for everybody. So take this message with a grain of salt. But I feel like if you apply yourself, everything else just falls in line for you, whether it may be unfavorable to you at the time or not. Like you will have opportunities to make it right. So if you are in bad situations right now, I feel like you will definitely have an opportunity to get out of that dirt, turmoil, whatever you want to call that. You can definitely rise above it all. You just have to apply yourself. And I think just by visiting old places to see how far you came, and just realize that that's not where you're going, I think that's all the power you really need. Just celebrate those achievements, and that's just going to keep you going. That's all I have to say.
All right, well, if you this episode felt a little bit different to me. I don't know about you, Joe, but just thinking that just there's an importance in reflecting on your actions, on your experiences, and there's a lot to be gained there too. If you're just looking to, gauge kind of your growth or gauge your regression too, or see if you've been moving sideways. But I guess I'll kind of leave on this, and just if you do anything after listening to this episode, if you made it this far, just ask yourself, how did you get, how did I get here? Wherever it is you are right now in this moment, how did you get there? Are you happy with it? Are you dissatisfied with it? Do you wish it could be different? I'm sure there's a lot of things that come to mind if you ask yourself that question, but I just kind of want to leave it there. And just, I hope that if you're listening, you take the time, because the world, things move so fast, and there's not a lot of, some of the biggest mindset gains I've made are just in like purely just having time for reflection, looking at my actions and how they led me to get where I was and what mistakes I've made, what good choices I've made. But yeah, the good and the bad. And I think that if we were able to really spend more time looking at our past decisions, looking at our circumstances, where we came from, and really looking at how we got to where we are today, I think we will be better off in our future, and also better positioned to help others too that are ahead of us, and maybe those that are behind us too. So, but that's all. Thanks for listening. Take care. Be safe.
Later.
Gapstone.